All right, good evening, everyone. This is Tuesday, April 26, 2016. This is the regular meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 19th, 2016 special meeting?
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second?
Second by Laura. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have an opportunity for public comment. Is there any members of the public that would like to make a comment at this time? No? Okay.
I told our students we give them extra credit if they did.
Right.
Yes, I have a comment. Please raise your voice so we can hear.
Okay, thank you. All right, and now we're going to have our annual data report. Mr. Krebs.
Please talk quietly amongst yourselves while I fiddle with the technology.
Are you going to be using
Marvin, you're not going to break it again, are you?
Yeah, that's why I displaced.
We'll just talk quietly.
Watch your step there. It's already tripped over a cord once. Yeah. Watch your step.
Maybe he'll probably stand by the mic.
Opening move is a trip hazard.
We get a reprieve next week.
That's right, but then we have
The 10th, the 17th, and the 24th, right?
not to the regular, right? We just have a week break.
Dinner on the 17th? So we talk about what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
The ocean. Why don't you, I'll throw the slides up and we'll know the answer to that chart.
I have not recently.
Watch your step there, Mary.
Did you get a recently one?
So much for that safety award, huh? Got a major trip hazard there. Hi, Lisa.
Right. You get one of the kids or builder, won't count. The workers count. Well, but this is right now.
Yeah.
Voila. It's the end of the show. It's been a pleasure. Hope you enjoyed it. People appreciate my presentations being about that length. So. You may too before. Let's see if this little gizmo works. Okay, should I talk into this, you think?
Only if you want people at home to hear you. Probably be a good idea.
The answer is yes.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to ask your permission to have my back to you then whilst I talk into this thing.
No problem.
They can hear me if I just talk like this?
They should be.
Okay, hi. My name is Marvin Krebs. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction in the Rhinebeck Central School District. Typically, on an annual basis, the board asks me to come before you and sort of review the data that we've collected and sort of share whatever insights that I might have. I did sort of discuss this with the curriculum subcommittee. We sort of talked about how we might go about doing this. So what we did was we've started to feed information up into the statewide data warehouse in a manner that has allowed them to make it available in the form of formal reports at this site called data.nicet.gov. We downloaded those reports off, turned them into PDFs, and we've actually posted them on the district's website, so they are available for public consumption. That site that I just mentioned is available for public consumption too. It's just up there. Rather than us creating a second report and reporting all that same information, which, as you could tell if you even looked at those at all, some of those reports are 145 pages long, and so it just didn't make any sense to keep producing that same information. And more importantly, it seemed kind of in the public interest to reduce that information to just some basic observations about, okay, what does all this stuff mean? Because it's kind of, after a while, just numbers on a page in a field with lots of descriptors, and all these numbers are derived from various places. So what does it all mean? That's my big hope, that I'll try to make this mean something. So I'll go ahead and get started doing that. So I always like to start out this discussion about data just talking about the Rhinebeck Central School District more generally. Fortunately, in my judgment, this district operates off of mission, vision, core values statement, and that tends to be kind of the touchstone that drives and directs our thinking more generally, so that we don't allow ourselves to get so narrow and just the quality of our schools being based on test scores and these sort of metrics that are getting bandied about in the newspapers and amongst the politicos. So we try to broaden out that discussion. We just finished up a round of reviewing and revising the mission, vision, core values, and so there are some new words in there that took on special meaning for people that participated in the development of these documents. So it's kind of my practice to sort of highlight things that I think jumped out at me. And one thing that jumped out at me probably the most over the last several really months, even well into last year, as we were discussing this mission, vision, core value idea, is this notion of Rhinebeck Central School District aspiring to be a collaborative educational community. And the more I see documents coming from places, that seems to be a real sort of core need, is a real shared commitment to try to collaborate together across different stakeholder groups in order to create this excellent learning environment that we're talking about, and ensuring the kinds of successes for our kids that we're talking about in terms of generosity of spirit, passion for learning, and success. But you'll notice that this concept of collaboration comes up everywhere. So we're talking about working collaboratively with staff, parents, and the community to support the kids. We're talking about learner outcomes that talk about our students being collaborative workers when they leave Rhinebeck High School as a vision. We're talking about, even as a core value, this notion of collaboration. And it's worth sort of noting as a core value, that tends to be sort of your rock bottom belief system about what's really important. And it's worth just lingering for a moment to notice that that says the education of our students is a process involving the entire educational community, and it highlights all these groups. So this is a group effort, this thing we call education. The students, the teachers, administrators, non-instructional personnel, work education, families, community at large, and probably anybody else we could think of that comes into that matters. And these cliches of it takes a village to raise a child, in fact, it takes a village effort to raise and instantiate a high-quality educational system. And so this last go-around, we affirmed that. This board affirmed this mission, vision, core value, and so we'll be using this as a touchstone as we move forward in our CS planning over the next several years. So with collaboration as a sort of watchword, I'll dive into some discussion about data and numbers and try to make some sense out of all that. But before I do that, I always like to talk about educational assessment more generally, because again, I feel like assessment in this modern era, the way it's used at times, has confused and distorted the central purpose for which educational evaluation assessment is designed in the first place. So, assessment is kind of a special kind of an evidentiary argument, if you will. It provides evidence so that we can reason about that in a way that gives us some valid and reliable things to say about those results. And it talks about kids. Well, what do they know? What can they do? What have they accomplished? What might they do in the future? So we're trying to use this information to do a lot of what I just call inferencing. We're inferring from this information. And that's where it seems like a lot of trouble has broken out in this area of educational assessment and evaluation. If you think about it, we do it for a lot of different reasons. We're trying to figure out the success of particular individuals. We're trying to figure out the success of our programs. We're trying to see if the instruction that we provide for our students works in a manner that we hope it will to achieve the goals for learning that we have for our students. And it helps more generally with particular groups if we see that they may be struggling in response to our instructional program. typically you think of instruction, assessment rather, in two different ways, summative and formative, and I'll be looping back to this notion of summative and formative momentarily. But summative, you would think it's at the end, it's the assessment of learning, if you will. Whereas formative assessment is more assessment for learning. That is, as you go along, you're adjusting your instruction in response to formative instruction. So formative instruction is more of a probe-like thing. You're looking to see, hey, we tried this particular strategy, we implemented this particular teaching routine or this unit of study. Did it produce the outcome that we were looking for? We taught English language arts all year in the 3rd grade. So how did the kids do generally against a benchmark assessment that's formative in nature? That's kind of how we think about it. What's interesting to me is that in this sort of modern era of accountability, districts are now being mandated to use assessment data of the summative and formative sort to evaluate the quality of teachers and principals, to evaluate the overall quality of our schools and our academic programs. Well, these tests were never designed for this purpose. They were never set up in a manner to be used for that purpose. And in fact, there's a lot of complexity in even inferring about the overall quality of a teacher or a principal based on how kids perform on tests. So I'd like to put that in as a caveat. So we're generally speaking trying to use it for these purposes, guide our intervention and our policies. We're trying to see if collect individual student information about achievement with respect to the goals. We're trying to see, if we collect information, can we collect enough information to convict a student of having learned something? That's kind of what I'm talking about here, right? So let's talk a little bit about the evidence we have to convict the Rhinebeck Central School District of being a high-quality school district. How about we try that? See how we do. So you'll notice that there's some general trends. We talked about this during the curriculum committee to say, okay, what are some of those big picture general trends without getting in the weeds about numbers? You can just see generally, back in 10-11 compared to 15-16, snapshot data on Beds Day during these years, which is, the first Wednesday in October, I think. So you see that all students, 1158 and 10-11, all students 1098 and 15-16. So don't need to be a data analyst to see that there's a general decline in enrollment in the district. At the same time, you'll see that in 10-11, we had about 126 kids classified economically disadvantaged. For counting purposes, that's students who are eligible for free and reduced price lots in the school district. You'll see there were 126 kids there, constituted about 11% of that population. So now fast forward to the present time, 1098, 1516, and you'll notice that on Beds Day this last fall, we had 186 kids classified that, and that constituted 17%. So while this number is overall declining at a fairly steady rate over that 6-year period, this number here, by not only raw numbers, but by percent of the overall population, is increasing. I don't think anybody would find that surprising given the economic conditions that we're all facing, as a region as well as a country, but it is a reality even in Rhinebeck Central schools. You'll see that our overall population of special education students, has generally declined by number, but you also have that same overall decline in general population. So you would expect that to also kind of be declining too, unless something dramatic had changed in terms of either the population of students with disabilities or more generally our academic programs aren't meeting their needs and so on. So you just see generally that number starts to go down, and it's true. We have a fairly steady but not large number of English language learners that get classified for ELL services, English language learner services. And you'll see that we have a Hispanic population in our community that generally is kind of running a little bit more. So we're getting more of that student population that we need to provide services for. Some of whom, but not all of whom, might require English language services to support them in being successful in schools. That's a general snapshot of some things that I saw in the demographic data that we have to contend with in the academic program. I have implications for that. So if you look overall here, now these are formative data. Remember I talked about snapshot data at grade levels as kids move through our system. So here's a sort of a 5-year retrospective of 3 through 8 on that side, English language arts assessments. So again, without getting in the weeds, these are just simple percentages of kids who, by the state measurement of scoring proficient, scored proficient. The short version of that means that kids take these tests, they get so many right and they get so many wrong on the test. They take that raw score and they convert it to something that's called a scaled score, and then they cut that scaled score into pieces: level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. It sounds simple. It's actually a complicated mathematical formula, but it gives you the idea. Kids who score in the level 3 and 4 range are determined to be proficient on these exams. But I'd like you to notice that you'll notice that back in 10-11, we had these kind of numbers, and if I took you back to circa 5, 6, we had kids scoring 89%, 95% proficient on those tests. So something perniciously strange is happening in this data. Well, I can just tell you, you can see this year, it wasn't like in 12, 13, all of a sudden we just taught really badly that year compared to the previous year, right? So something happened. Well, what happened was the State Education Department adopted new standards, started testing those standards, rolled out new tests, didn't give school districts a lot of time to adjust to those standards. And so if you were a student, for example, who found yourself, unfortunately in the 7th grade that year, you might not have had much instruction directly against what they tested you on that very year and subsequent years. So the rapid rate of change in the education system, both at the national and state level, has had downward pressure on these percentage scores. But here's the really interesting thing. You take these standard scores from 14, 15, I was going to show you a bunch of these charts. It's not really a good use of our time, but I can just tell you it's true. If you look at the bell curve distribution of the standard scores in this year versus that year, they're almost identical. So overall, the population didn't really change that much. What changed was the assessment package and what the cut point would be for proficiency. So you can see that's sort of a rough explanation. That pattern holds in the math assessments in grades 3 through 8 as well. I'd like to throw this slide up here just to give you a basic idea of what I'm talking about when I talk about looking at these disaggregated groups. Special education students historically have struggled with these assessments because, by definition, to be eligible for a special education service, a student would be struggling with grade level expectations. So I would not be surprised when I gave them a benchmark assessment for a grade level that they couldn't pass the thing because we already knew that. So this is a little takeaway from what you should see in these tests is, for the most part, a lot of times what this tells you is stuff you already knew about these kids, which kind of undermines the utility of these tests sometimes. But that's been a pattern since we've been doing this way back in the NCLB years, back in 01, 02, 03, and so on. Same thing as in math, you'll see the same comparisons. If you look down this thing here, you've got all student total, and if you look at this overall population, very few of those special education kids were able to be successful on those tests as compared to their general education peers. What is also true, though, and so I want you to think back to that demographic report that I showed before, and then look across here. You see, generally that special education figure across here for ELA, it shows here. If you drop down to the economically disadvantaged kids, they also are finding these assessments to be challenging, and there's a general perception out there that that's going on everywhere, and it seems like that these students are going to struggle with these exams as well. You'll see that limited English proficient kids are going to struggle with these kinds of exams as well. So more generally, the takeaway from that is we are seeing a slight incline in populations, particularly economically disadvantaged students who are going to find these benchmark assessments challenging, which I think poses a special challenge to our programs at our 3 schools to sort of rally around those students, make sure that they're being successful, and provide support services as appropriate. You'll see that the same thing holds true here. Again, this is just another example of the same thing we're talking about. Mathematics, look across here. This particular population seemed to do a little better in mathematics, but still, as compared to the overall general population, just generally they find these assessments to be struggle for them. If you look at science across the board in grades 4 and 8, that's when the state tests. You'll see that generally speaking, the kids score high 90% pass rates. In Science 8, generally speaking, it's high 80s to 95% pass rates. If you look at that on a chart, this chart kind of gives you an idea of generally how kids do on that grade 4 assessment, which is, you'd like to see a flat line that looks like that up in the 90 range generally. Same thing is true of science age, just another way of pictorially demonstrating what I just said. So if you look here, this is, I call these the down and dirty charts because I feel like at some point you do have to look at them and say, okay, so generally from a formative point of view, what are your gaps? Because that's why you have all your support services programs in place. That's why you have academic intervention. That's why you have ESL. That's why you have programs like responsive intervention. That's why you have 504 plans and special education plans in the form of IEPs to provide specialized services for those kids. So these become good metrics, if you look back to my original charts, to help you more generally think, okay, we need to provide supports. It may not say anything about the overall quality of the instruction the student had. It just might just tell you more generally, hey, we need to take a look at that. But it would only be one piece of information that decision makers would use in the process of looking at kids. And I will say, these days, because of the nature of the policy environment we work in, people are paying less attention to that information while they're doing their evaluations of kids and looking for other ways to understand.
Marvin, before you move off that slide,
Yep.
the far right-hand column for
Yeah.
2015-16, what do those 100% figures represent?
Well, we sort of left that on there. At some point, we're going to have to change that because originally the 14-15 number was the year that in No Child Left Behind, every student in the United States was to score proficient on these tests, right? Way back in circa 2001-2, like Play Result 2, when it first went live, we started testing on it in 3-4 maybe. So we knew that we were on a 10-year run to getting every student in the country proficient. Well, in the interim, I just highlighted before that they changed the test, they changed the standards, and so we've been trying to, chase a goalpost and try to figure out where the field is while we're trying to move that number. So this 100% number, we just kept putting it up there because that's what our, I call them affectionately, our overlords, were expecting us to achieve. So now we're talking about another metric which goes out to 2022, and we're starting to look at another way of thinking about, okay, what would be the long-term goals? So that's why that 100% is there.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to jump to what I would like to think about as a summative assessment of our program. These are Regents proficiency rates, otherwise known as pass rates. If you look at 65 or better, or some kids have a safety net of 55 or better, depending upon their classification. If you look at these are the exams down the left-hand side, Algebra 2 Trig, all the way to U.S. history. You'll see that just generally, if you look at that summative chart, you should see a big difference between these outcomes. So at the summative level, all of a sudden in ELA, you're ticking off from 94 to 91% of the kids scoring proficient. If you look at Algebra 1, it's Common Core. First time the kids took that, it was 99%. Next time it's 93%. First time through on geometry, it was 100%. And then if you just look generally down this list here, U.S. 98, geometry, living environment 97. If you just think about this from a summative point of view, looking back, you see that as the kids progress through their years and go through developmental stages, cognitive development, physical, psychosocial, generally speaking, on average, the kids do fine. That's the takeaway. So that might constitute my evidentiary argument to accuse the district of being successful, right, if you see what I mean. So here's what that looks like on a flat line, just to give you an idea with the ELA and math. So again, just a quick comparative from 03 to the present. You see that we were tracking very near and have been all along this 100% proficiency thing in English language arts and mathematics at the high school level, which translates into some other metrics. Again, these are just general snapshot metrics, but if you look here, these are Rhinebeck High School mean SAT scores. This is reading, math, and writing across here. And if you just look, this is national, this is New York State, and this is Rhinebeck. So if you look at our total score across those three metrics as compared to the national or the state, generally speaking, our students score well above the state and national average. Now again, does that tell you anything qualitatively? Not really, but it does tell you, generally speaking, how our students tend to stack up in a national test. And again, that's setting aside the controversy associated with college board SAT. It does say that our kids generally at the summative level compare favorably. I think it's fair to say that. So here's another metric that I think is worth looking at, and that's in 2015, Rhinebeck High School administered 173 AP exams. If you just look at that as just a quick cut, 3, 4s, and 5s across, bio, calc, chem, ELA, comm, European history all the way across, you see that generally our students get 3s, 4s, and 5s on those tests. But I would also just suggest that because our core philosophy and our belief system around here is that we want students to take chances. We want them to put themselves in a situation where, yeah, they may struggle a little bit because when they leave high school, they're going to encounter rigorous work of an AP sort. And so even if students get 1s and 2s, that's not going to bother us that much, actually. It's going to be, we might say, hey, that's kind of a good thing because we're getting more kids interested in participating in rigorous courses of study. Some pretty good research out there that says if they're in a rigorous course of study like that and get a 1 or a 2, they actually learn more even though they might than if they'd taken an easier class, even though they didn't score as well on an examination. So I think that shows favorably, again, just generally speaking about the district. We threw this into the mix only because I wanted you to just get a general sense going backwards. This is AP all the way back to 14, 15, 13, 14, 12, 13, 11, 12. That we've been at this AP thing for quite a while and building it over time. So it's been a conscious effort to try to provide that opportunity for kids, and generally that pattern of 3s, 4s, and 5s has held. Our 2- and 4-year postgraduate graduate college plans, just again, general metrics. If you look at it back to 10, 11, about 90% of them of our graduating class went to 2- and 4-year colleges, 92 last year. So you can see that, generally speaking, you've got a graduation rate that runs, generally speaking, back to 10, 11, 90 to 92 up in that range. So you got 90 to 92% of the kids graduating from high school every year, and 90 to 92% of those kids graduating from college. So I think you can see it sort of assembling a general picture here. So let's talk about Rhinebeck High School and then the other schools. It was named, again, these are just general metrics. They don't mean anything by themselves. They're just snapshot pictures. This record was named as U.S. News and World, number 810 in the country with a silver medal, 85 in the state of New York. It was named as one of the most challenging high schools by WAPO and ranked 88. And again, just to reiterate what I just said, 4-year cohort graduation, 92, college attendance, 92, AP, 389 kids in the school, we administered 173 AP exams. Accountability status across the 3 schools, based on how the kids did on these metrics that I've been talking about. Rhinebeck High School was dignified and signified. As a reward high school based on how the graduation rate and how the kids did on the English and math assessments. Buckley Middle School on English and math, reward middle school, and Chester Winston Elementary School being a good standard. So what do you see generally? Well, I'll just kind of run through quickly. Elementary science, strong. Elementary middle mathematics remains strong and improving. Middle school ELA continues to improve and the science results remain strong. And all of those programs feeding solidly into the high school to create that summative experience. And I think that's the key to always take away on that. So if you look across there, just all the way across to the end here, you see 14, 15, 92, 93, 99, 100 in integrated algebra, Common Core algebra, geometry, Common Core geometry. 91% pass on English regions. Across all other regions, exams were solid. High AP participation rate, high participation in extracurricular opportunities and athletics in the school district. 4-year cohort graduation of 98. Post-high school outcomes remain high. 2- and 4-year college. So lots to celebrate here. I would say, though, that it probably is always worth stopping and saying just generally, this is about our students, and they really are to be commended because they're the ones that are doing this work. We come to work and watch them work and try to support their work. And a lot of what I just said is a direct attribute of our student population and the support that those kids get. And I think that really should be highlighted at every chance we get. While we like to take accolades as adults, this is all about them and their achievements that I just talked about right here. Our SAT scores compare favorably. We have multiple opportunities for kids to participate in academics, arts, athletics, extracurricular. I didn't put this in here because it's a student achievement report, but that's a huge part of a student's experience as they go through our system. We've implemented Project Lead the Way, the engineering program in K-5 now this year full-time. We've got Gateway to Technology, and we've got 2 engineering classes in our high school. We're on these best high school, reward high schools. Buckley Middle School is on the reward, Chancellor's in good standing. So I think it would be safe to suggest that Rhinebeck Central School District is in very solid shape when it comes back to performance. So what do we do going forward? Again, I won't go over this whole thing, other than I'll just pause and talk about the CDEP process because I think that's where the development comes from. So right now we're in the middle of a strategic planning process where we're looking at some of this information, setting some long-term goals around trying to achieve an outcome of all of our students graduating college and career and citizen ready by 2022, and putting together a package of programs that are going to support them as they struggle to then meet that aspirational goal of all those learner outcomes in our mission, vision, core value by 2022. So we're still working on that. We try to engage in the spirit of that collaboration as much as we can through a process, sometimes messy, because we're trying to shoehorn a planning process into while we're trying to run a school system, right? So we're trying to do all that at the same time. But that's where the real opportunity for growth is going to go. And I think also dropping down to curriculum development, we're going to have to stay abreast of all the changes that are going on because changes are coming again, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, so I'll get back to that in just a moment. And here we go. So this little somewhat blurry slide we swiped from the State Education Department. The only reason I swiped it directly is because it was presented to the Board of Regents at their last meeting on Monday. Not this last Monday, but the previous one. So while this is somewhat hard to see, you can see that we're here somewhere around July 2016, March to July. Here we're at 1920. And you'll see here that what's going to start is a comprehensive standards review of math and English language arts. And so they're going to review all of the standards in ELA and math across this timeline right here, for the purposes of finishing up the standards review in those areas, doing curriculum development somewhere around the summer of 17, and creating yet more resources and professional development for us in 18-19, with phasing in brand new tests for ELA and math by the 1920 school year. So that's the new plan. So the new world order has rolled into Albany, and we're doing this now. Meanwhile, they are finishing up a comprehensive revision of the science standards, and they just finished up a review of the social studies standards, and now they're just starting to roll out toolkits to everybody, K-12. So we'll be engaged in, quick takeaway on that, we'll be engaged in a comprehensive review and revision of science, social studies, mathematics, and English language arts over the ensuing 4 or 5, probably 6, I guess 10, at the rate things operate in this state. So if you look at the teacher principal evaluation process, you might notice that since these things are all tied together, they are also during this moratorium period where they're not counting state tests as a part of a teacher's or a principal's annual professional performance review. They're going to review and revise that entire system with a brand new system that is due out, all shiny and ready in the 1920 school year. So you can see a lot happens somewhere circa 1920. So that's generally the picture of where things stand in the Rhinebeck Central School District, where things stand more generally in the state of New York with regard to education. Any questions?
Yes?
Yeah.
How do you see the CDEP process intersecting with the changing standards that are going to be coming into play over the next 5 years, 4 years?
Well, this is one man's voice. So I'd say back to my collaborative idea, I'd be keenly interested in knowing what other stakeholders think about that too. So that might be my first answer. I think the key thing that the CDEP process can accomplish is convening collaborative groups of stakeholders to get a shared understanding of what our challenges are and to create goals around how to fill in those gaps between where we would like to be, our preferred future, and where we are now. So I see the CDEP process as a sort of a way to accomplish that.
But, I mean, to the extent that I inferred from the way that you were talking about it, the state education department is presenting us with goals we must meet. How much is Rhinebeck going to be able to Rhinebeckize those, do you think?
Remains to be seen. I spent some time opining about the fact that our strategic planning is done for us in Washington, D.C. and in Albany. And we have to make some kind of sense out of it, and we've been reacting to it. So I think the CDEP process at least offers an opportunity to get out in front of that and affirm our own values. So I'll give you an example of that. It may not have been perfect, but it was an attempt to affirm this notion of taking control of standards. So we convened multiple groups of people over the past several years to write curriculum in the area of English language arts. We engaged our teachers to review what mathematics resources were available and try to make sense out of those and implement those in the classrooms as they saw fit, while trying to hang on to the fact that the realities are we have to use these tests because we're mandated to do so. So I think the secret sauce, if there is that. It's giving our teachers the professional courtesy and honor to get their own minds around that, write their own curriculum, and continue to create that tradition here, which I would like to hold on to, and I think we have a shared community commitment to that. I think that's one way to do that. I think another way to do that is to not let ourselves, which is sort of why I got to talk about this the way I do, not let ourselves get overly focused on how kids are doing on tests and always think more broadly about the overall developmental arc of our kids. And I think everybody, I think our building leaders, our teachers, I think everyone thinks that way. I think generally, I think our community thinks that way. So I think that's another way of staying out on top of that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I know this may be early days since this plan is we're talking about 4 years from now when these new standards should be in place, in theory. Can you give us any kind of sense if there's a sort of a deep change that's afoot? There were certain kinds of ideas, for instance, around the way we teach English language arts, that there was an increasing premium as students grew older on certain kinds of nonfiction texts, working with abstraction, moving away from fiction. What's your sense of the mood in terms of standards, development of new standards in these areas? Is there a new philosophy in town, in other words?
That's an easy question. Well, again, I can tell you what they're doing.
Okay.
So the State Education Department just put out an all-call to the field. I want to say about 1,200 people applied for the ELA review jobs, about 780 some, maybe 775, somewhere in that range, applied for the math. They're going to convene these teams. Actually, they're doing this pretty short cycle. I believe it's mid-May. They're going to do their first rollout. What they are saying they're going to do is a comprehensive, line-by-line, standard-by-standard evaluation of the New York State learning standards in English language arts and math. They're going to review them for developmental appropriateness, for clarity, and so on and so forth. So we are anticipating, if they make good on that promise, that this will be a pretty thorough review. I can tell you, I actually know people who they just got their letters yesterday. So I already know people who got picked to be on those teams, and they're loaded for bear. I know that. They're all going up there with big stacks of paper with all of their complaints about why this is there and that is there. So I anticipate this being an interesting process. I think what will be the important thing is state ed going to start listening to the field this time?
Yeah, that, right.
So, Steve, I can be really long-winded, but that's the answer to the question, right? Will they listen? Because they were told all this stuff before and listened.
They didn't listen.
So the new commissioner, which I like to give people some slack, got here and trying to make sense out of something that's a mess. She claims she wants to listen, so we'll see.
So Marvin, what do the tea leaves say about science and social studies? What are your toolkits leading you to believe?
Actually, the science process through this strategic plan that they're doing has been some of the best, most intelligent curriculum development work that they've been doing in the state. First of all, it's been kind of off the radar, so they've heard a lot of politics. So that means people who actually know something about this can really process this. So they have been, again, reviewing the next generation standards, trying to figure out how they fit in New York State from elementary all the way to high school. And I would say that if they just finished the standards review for that, I think the public comment ended in February, maybe February 15th. So now they're digesting all that public comment. We are supposed to know what that's going to look like in the summer. More generally, they're going to start emphasizing more the scientific method as a way of teaching science, particularly in the elementary school, and then getting deeper as kids progress into the high school. They're also talking about integrating more engineering and design type thinking and creating collaborative groups around problem solving using engineering and design, but applying it across disciplines, both physical and the environment. So those are the big picture things that we're doing with these next gen standards. So we'll see how it goes. But all that sounds good to me. But it does imply some major shifts in the way science is instructed in the state. And I think we'll have a significant impact on the curriculum here. Social studies, also good. What they've tried to do is update the standards so that the standards in American history, for example, don't end when Ronald Reagan left office, for example. Stuff like that. Because we have other presidents and other historical events that occurred after that. And so somebody said, hey, maybe we should add some of these other things. So they added a lot of that other stuff in both American history as well as global. They've also made some adjustments in the social studies standards by asking districts to take a more what's called an inquiry-based approach. So as opposed to just studying one, when I was a high school history teacher years ago, one darn thing after another happened in history, from the 5 ancient river civilizations to as far as I could get in a given year. Well, so they're trying to get you to get away from that and do a more inquiry-based approach, where you're taking social or historical problems and looking more deeply into those social and historical problems while using the content as a way to solve problems. So it's a more inquiry-based approach. So there's going to be a bunch of these kind of units that are going to be developed that will have to be somehow or another built into our local curriculum. That's going to pose a challenge for us because we just finished integrating English language arts and science and social studies into our units across all the grade levels in the elementary school. So I think that's going to be a big challenge. But that's a big picture kind of thing. But I think those things are good. Those are good curriculum suggestions.
So a couple of things a couple of questions I had you sort of answered. Like, our science results are really different than the other ones. So is that sort of your answer? Like it's, kind of flown under the radar and it's a less politicized test. There's so much Common Core focus and testing focus on ELA and math. I mean, because it's just sort of striking the difference.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple things about those science tests. First of all, they've stuck with the standard, the MST standard, the Math Science Technology standards, for a long time. And they've also stuck with the test package a long time. So they've given school districts a significant amount of time to adjust. And if you want to just had, for some reason, schools have let me hang around a long time, so I've got to watch this thing for a long time. That's one of the things, is longevity and giving schools a chance to adjust. Kids tend to learn what you teach them and how you teach over time. So that's one reason. The other is, honestly, and again, I'm outside my area, and I certainly would not want to criticize my overlords about testing, but those tests for math and English language arts have been little adventures in psychometrics. Okay? And what I mean by that is they've written clever by half questions of the nature for an 8-year-old might have to read 11 or 12 paragraphs and then answer a question comparing paragraph 3, 5, and 7 with paragraph 4, 6, and 8 for the main idea. Things like that.
Right.
Or tricksy vocabulary to try to sort out whether or not you're a level 4 kid, a level 3 kid. In science, they didn't do any of that stuff. They kind of stuck with what they were testing, which gives people a chance to adjust. I would say more generally that's a reaction to that. Plus, I also think with the area of English language arts, it's just the fact that a certain percentage of kids struggle to learn to read, and it takes them a long time to master the skills underneath that and to write. And so that's why you have to look at that arc with that, I think. And the same thing is with mathematics. They consolidate their learning. So I think that's the answer to that myself.
So, and I asked that question not because I'm a complete critic. I agree with your criticisms of the testing regime, and it's really positive that some things are changing, or potentially, such that the commissioner herself, or rather, I think it's the head of the Board of Regents who said she would actually opt to have her kids test out of these testing things. So that's a huge shift, and whatever else we think about opting out of tests, I think it's only because of parents opting out in New York State that the political world has changed around that. But, and I so appreciate the work that you have done and the leadership you have provided from the years that I've been on the board, seeing the crazy schemes come and go, depending on, the politics of staying focused on how do we improve curriculum and instruction. That being said, of course, teachers can't and students can't help but absorb the pressures on them to, pass tests and perform well on tests. And, it's a horrific system, I think, because all these resources should be going into how do we teach best? What I always say is there's so much to learn, right? Every day for all of us, even at the ages we are, that, how we teach, what we teach, it's all really important to think about. But this testing thing is just been a huge waste of resources and damaging to public schools. What I'm concerned about, I just want some, maybe feedback from you, is how much it is shifting, and now the evaluation of teachers and principals is being delayed more. That's all good. But, do we still try to monitor the impact of the tests on the classroom experience so that we're not, raising the stakes? Because even Regents and SATs, which our students perform well on, it's just test after test after test for kids, and a real diversion from learning and citizenry, which you have talked about, and then our goals talk about citizenship. So I'm just if you could just describe a little bit of the conversations that happen at a grade level that ensures, sort of helps what you've already said, but just kind of describe more how it goes, that we don't use the test as the metric, because the pressure is to use that as you work from the test score and then you go back and you create a curriculum, and that's the pressure that's always there. So I'm just asking you to maybe really speak to that directly on the classroom grade level. Because teachers, presumably up until it's been, delayed again, I know that teachers were concerned that this was going to reflect on their job, and their future as educators. Now that's shifted, so maybe that's given people breathing room, but, we're still here talking about tests.
Simple question.
A really simple, no, I think I just think it's important that around the table, we talk, okay.
Let me try. I think this has raised the anxiety level of our professional faculty to a level that is unwarranted and unnecessary. I'm just telling you the fact. I'm saying it in front of anybody. I really believe that's true. I think I just did say it in front of a lot of people. So I do think so. And I would be lying to you if I didn't say that they don't express that. I would also say, in that same breath, that I don't know of a teacher in this school district, not in my experience here, now maybe the principals could contradict this, but I doubt it, who, when push comes to shove, they don't put that pressure on kids. They say, hey, do your best, try your best, but this is not the be-all and end-all of life. You are of your life. You are not a test score. You are a human being or a student, and let's keep this in perspective. So I don't think that ever leaks into how they're treated. I would say it's almost the reverse. They experience this frustration themselves and communicate that amongst themselves and to each other, and I suspect through advocacy groups as appropriate. But I would say that generally they will do their best to make sure that the kids are protected. I think we have a lot of good people who work with the kids. And I don't see that. It's never been my experience. I do think that anxiety is real. I think that this test-based accountability system that has become personal in the manner that now we evaluate your professional performance based on how kids do on tests has created fear and anxiety. It has made it harder for people to trust and take risks, and they're much less likely to do so. So it has posed us significant challenges, and I think we've had to work at that personally, and that's my reaction to that. I would also say, and maybe this is because the grandbabies are coming along, and I'm starting to think about this a little differently. And I went to a workshop the other day down at Manhattanville College with a guy the guy's name's Mark Brackett. He's at Yale. I was there actually. And he made a lot of hay in about 3 hours about the social emotional development of kids. And so to your point, I think one of the things maybe that connects with Lisa's point, how does the CDEP process have a vector here? We have to, think about the psychological, emotional, and social health of kids too, not just their cognitive development. And really brought that home to me when I was sitting there, and it hasn't left my mind yet. So I think part of the answer is that. But also I think that's true of our people who work with kids too. They need to, you can't ask them to nurture kids unless they feel they're in a place that's safe and so on and so forth. So I think that's going to be a real challenge. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that this has had an effect on all of us. Nobody wants to stand up and say, hey, all of our schools are on lap lists now. We've got to scramble around and figure out what to do about that. It's a real concern that's out there.
And so another question I have, if I may, is it's not, I so appreciate that the various pieces of data give us little bits of information here and there, and that the tests don't define the kids, but it's not just true here, it's true everywhere, right? It's just true nationally that kids from low socioeconomic backgrounds struggle more in school. And and I appreciate the data. I think we really all have to be really conscious of it, and our community has to be conscious of the fact that the number of kids who are eligible for free and reduced lunch has grown again, and in ways that I think people in Hudson Valley would be surprised in Rhinebeck. So what are the kinds of things that you do or teachers do to address that? I mean, is that deliberately identified very clearly in classrooms about how to give kids more supports?
That's an interesting question. I think that really maps here more broadly to our support services. So I think that maps around either our RTI or AIS support. They do a lot of early intervention with kids in the early grades in K1 and 2 with reading, so they stay on top of those kids and track them very closely. So I think there's a kind of a high-touch approach to that, where the kids know. So it's not like you have to aggregate kids in chunks and say, oh, we're going to deal with the whole group. every cohort is known, that kids come to the attention of our child study RTI teams, and we're focusing on them if they require those services. Because the way AIS is set up, it services all kids, doesn't matter what category you're in. Right? You don't have to be economically disadvantaged to get in there. You could be a student who's just struggling in school. So I think that's how that gets addressed. I would just say, though, if that trend continues, I think perhaps we should be thinking about other strategies that we may want to layer into that package that's already there. That's kind of where I was going in my suggestion. I think historically we've relied on that support package that I'm talking about. And if you look at the end game, it seems to work, like it works. But we know what the overall trajectories are for students who fall into those classifications, and we need to think about that consciously. So that's where the CDEP process perhaps is.
Thanks for all of
That
you.
helps.
No, it does. I mean, we could talk for hours about it. I really just appreciate all that you do, and I couldn't be prouder of our school system. I think we do. I think you're absolutely right. We provide an excellent education, and the work that you do is certainly instrumental in making that true.
I mean, it's a team effort. I can just say that. The collaboration thing's real. Amazing. Thank you. Thanks for this.
Any other questions for Mr. Krebs before he sits down? Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Mark.
All right. Principals reports.
Why don't you just move that mic stand over? Yeah.
It's a multimedia.
Trip, Mark.
Yeah, he's good at doing that.
Not on camera.
this is not good.
Highlight of YouTube. Yeah, right.
Good evening, everyone. Just some things that have been happening. Chancellor, got a bit of a list here for you. So first, I did want to just commend, we had some visitors from Arlington, some administrators that wanted to see our STEM program. So and it's actually good that Marvin's here. I wanted to thank Marvin and David Wolfen for actually, kind of working on getting that going. And we found a date. They were able to come. They visited, I think, a third grade class. And then met with me and David afterwards and just really had a lot of great questions in an attempt to try to get some of their elementary schools to do a similar model. So it's nice. Word's getting out. And I think in New York State, and there's other models that are similar to what we do as far as one person being the STEM facilitator and the classes coming in. There are versions of that around the country, but in New York State, it seems like we're one of the only people who indulge in that type of setup, like a co-teaching model where there's one person and the classes come to them. So I just wanted to say that, like Marvin mentioned earlier, it's the first year we're doing it full time. It has been a great success, and it's really starting to kind of build some momentum where other schools are coming to see us and see what we do and bouncing ideas off of us and things like that. So I wanted to mention we finally were able to do that visit late last month. It worked out very well. In addition, one of the first things I wanted to mention was one of my favorite couple of hours this year so far, and it was on April 11th. We had 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students right smack dab in the middle of the ELA the week before and the math later that week. We had them all come over at 9 o'clock in the morning. They got a chance to see Fiddler on the Roof, pretty much the entire production. I thank these guys for providing the time and releasing those students so they could perform for us. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students got so much out of it. There was even a Q&A at the end. The 3rd grade couldn't stay for it because they had to get back for lunch. But it was outstanding. I sat for the whole thing, freed up my schedule. I have decided I will never miss another production in this high school. It blew my mind. The kids were blown away, my staff. That Q&A at the end was great. I mean, everyone, even the students who built the set were sitting there to ask questions, and they did ask questions about the set. And I just want to say, I actually spoke to those specific students. I had just seen Misery on Broadway, And there wasn't much difference between that set and what I saw them accomplish there. It was really amazing. So I just wanted, again, in a public forum, I know we had a teacher write a letter. I don't know if it got to you guys, did it? Because I do have a copy that I can
I
send to you.
haven't seen it yet.
I'll send it to maybe Joe, he can distribute it to you guys. I apologize, I didn't bring it with me. Mrs. Morrissey wrote on behalf of her class in my building, and just wanted everyone to know really what an amazing experience it was. We did a few activities when we got back to my building, and the kids just couldn't say enough about it. So it was just a great, we hope to continue it in the future and try to work and set that up. A few updates. We had our Move On Grant video contest. We did that for a second year in a row. And you may already know, but it did include all 6th grades, all 23 classes, as opposed to more of a sampling last year when we provided, provided a video for that grant. We did come in second place. We were able to secure $500 for our PE department. Another great accomplishment, in my opinion, this year, we always participate in Jump Rope for Hearts. It's something we've been doing for a long time to benefit the American Heart Association. The students, parents, the staff have always been really great, but this year was really a banner year. Our goal this year was $4,800, which would have beat our goal, our amount from last year. And we shattered it by more than $9,000 and raised a total of $13,643 for the American Heart Association. And by the way, I'll skip to the end of my note here. Grade 3 alone raised $3,200, and we tried to commend them as many times as we possibly could. So, by the way, a little comic relief, I guess. As a result, myself and Mr. Edson and Mr. Yarnell dressed up in full-body Dalmatian dog costume, which, by the way, wound up in Northern Dutchess News as an incentive for the students. So when they shattered it, we were like, all right, there's no way I can do it. And the cool thing was we actually wrapped that around CLS Heart Healthy Day, which was more of a celebration of what the kids did, and so the 3 of us kind of did. I have to commend those 2 gentlemen. They wore it all day long. I did not wear it all day long, probably for more like an hour, but kids got a kick out of it, and it was really to celebrate their efforts. So I wanted another opportunity to give them a little shout out there. Also featured in Dutchess News this week is an article. It's actually a full-page spread highlighting all of our after-school programs at Chancellor, and it includes everything from the great work the PTSO does with our electives to the LLL program. They even talked a little bit about our enrichment programs in the morning. So it's a really nice article if you get a chance. I think it came today. Just don't have a copy with me. A little update on Run Across America. I had mentioned the pedometers early in the year. Our most recent numbers, just an update, students have run a total of over 900 miles and have burned more than 80,000 calories as a school, and we are all currently in Chicago right now, so that's about where we've made maybe a little, because that's probably a couple weeks old, that data, so I wanted to report last Thursday, our first CLS Parent Academy. It was last Thursday night, April 21st. It was sponsored by the District Health and Wellness Committee. We kind of bounced off the success of the middle school, high school version that we did last year. Now we would have liked more numbers, but I think for a first event, the message that was sent out was done very well. I wanted to thank not only my co-members of the committee, but certainly we had some people from the community, even a student from the high school there who took their time and were with us till the wee hours, actually. So they did a great job, and one of the things, the 2 kind of basic topics we discussed was living in the social media world and adolescent sleep. So I think it's obviously something we're going to discuss and try to continue in future years. I know the parents that were there got a lot out of it, a lot of note-taking, a lot of questions. It was really just a great event. I also want to report, it's something I've neglected to report in the past, that is something we started this year. We call it the PE Council. And Mr. Yarnell and Mr. Edson have a group of students that work with the PE department to discuss units, help make decisions about events, provide feedback. So it's really the first time. And it got up and running this year, but I just kind of neglected to put it on my report. So I wanted to let you know that we've got it going this year. There's a handful of students that are involved, and they really kind of work with us to help out that program, which is a great thing as students have voiced in the elementary schools. Wanted to let you know, as we always do each year, now we're currently at the tail end of the 4th grade's books journey. I always want to thank, on behalf of CLS and certainly grade 4, Arts and Ed for helping to provide, this just great program that extends for several weeks. Some amazing local artists and authors that really go through the whole process with our students. It's one of the best programs that I'm so glad we've been able to continue, and I know Arts and Ed really made a conscious effort to secure funds for that specific program, and I just really wanted to give them an extra thank you, because it's an amazing insight into the writing process that students wouldn't otherwise probably get at that level, and from the people who are doing it every day. So I also wanted to thank the PTSO for their staff appreciation lunch today. We had a great time. They brought music in. It was a packed house every period, so I wanted to thank them for that. They put a lot of effort into it, and provide some great food and company. Some upcoming events. We have our Project ACES and CLS Spirit Day along the lines of grade level colors, and it's our last one from the BLT initiative. We've combined those two things, and what Project ACES is it's all children exercising simultaneously. So there's a specific day we do it, and it's going to be May 4th next week. And what we're going to actually do is, the reason we thought it was a good idea to combine those two things is there's some really great photos around my building. There's some great photos of all the students. In fact, Mrs. Morrissey is in one of those black and white pictures as a student. So, you see kids stop all the time and look at them and ask questions about it. So one of the things we thought might be nice was to kind of take that day where each grade has been assigned a specific color, and it turns out to be what the colors are around 6th grade. So as it works out, what we thought we would do is do the exercises where Mr. Yarnell, Mr. Etz, and myself will kind of lead all the kids, and then we'll get them in kind of almost a rainbow type layout, and we'll get a picture from the roof looking down in the hopes that maybe we can blow it up and hang it. So something we thought that the building's kind of energized about. That really came from the grade level chairs, meetings, and we kind of put that together. So I'll keep you on top of that, but it would be just a great image. In addition, Engineers Week, May 4th and 5th, same week. First time that every grade at CLS is actually participating, K through 5. So we have, I want to thank the engineers. They're not there yet, but I'll give you a report next time I see you on what we propose. But we've got more engineers than ever. They're working really hard to put a schedule together. And obviously, it's an event we do each year that focuses on promoting STEM. And then finally, our spring concerts, grade 4 on May 18th and grade 5 on May 19th.
Questions for Mr. King?
You've been busy.
It's been a while since we've.
It has been a while.
I love that there are kids in a PE council.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Great
A great
idea.
model maybe for other kinds of ways kids can be involved in kind of
Yeah.
their education directly.
Yeah, there was an idea that I didn't, I kind of gave them the permission to kind of run with it, and they really did. So it's been successful. We're going to continue that each year.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Hey, Brett, would you just move that back out of the way so nobody, no, that trip hazard there?
Oh, this,
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you.
So as I've done in the past, I've reported out on a number of opportunities that we've tried to provide for BMS students to work with CLS students, high school as well. But I want to highlight a couple of things that have happened over the course of the last week or so and are going to continue to happen throughout the springtime. And one of the things that I mentioned to Brett prior to this meeting is, my goal is to make sure that at some point throughout the course of the year, we've had students working with CLS elementary school students at each grade level. And I think with these next few projects, I think we've actually achieved that this year. So a couple of things that have happened recently. Last week, members of the BMS Peer Leadership Club worked with CLS third grade classes, teaching students about cultural diffusion, about the Silk Road and the Columbian Exchange. They talked a lot about how goods and plants and animals and things moved throughout the continents in the 15th and 16th century. They talked a lot about where students thought tomato and basil plants originated and where they actually originated and how they got there. And then following that, they taught students a little bit about conservation and using recycled materials, they help the third grade students plant tomato and basil plants, create these green walls. I tried to print out some pictures and bring them to you this evening, so I'll have to share them with you digitally. Didn't work for some reason, but created green walls of growing tomato and basil plants that will now reside in the third grade classrooms, throughout the remainder of the school year and on into the fall. Our seventh grade French and Spanish students, through the work of Ms. Sandoval and Ms. Peterson, with the help of our computer teacher Susan Van Platt, have been working on their own project, creating and writing children's books in their target languages, French and Spanish. So this was an idea that was born about a month or so ago, and it continues to expand as the springtime goes on. So now we're working with first grade classes to have our French and Spanish students, our seventh grade students, share this work with the first grade classes over at CLS. In addition to that, this project is going to culminate through the use of some of the new equipment we have available to us in the BMS Computer Lab, with some interaction and a Skype session. We've already got this set up with a class of students in Spain, and we're working on France right now. So we're going to have some interaction using the technology up there between our seventh grade students and students, adolescents in France and Spain. So we're excited about that. Our eighth grade students have begun their study of Shakespeare at ELA through the generosity of the Arts and Education Committee. They've had an opportunity to do this for quite some time. And again, this year they will have performers that are coming in and working with them from the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Project. Each year, again, this is one of those connections between BMS and CLS. Our eighth grade students work throughout the month of May with performers from the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Project. They create their own version of Romeo and Juliet. They've done a couple of other different Shakespearean plays in the past, but Romeo and Juliet is the old standard. And I believe plans are in the works now to share that performance with the CLS visitors classes as well. Earlier this month, 3 more students, BMS students, were recognized as third quarter nominees in the Catching Kids Caring program. Thanks to the Kiwanis Club and Outlaw Books, who provide us with the opportunity to recognize 3 students each quarter for their, for serving as role models for their leadership within the school community. I will say that in all the years that I've worked as a building principal, I've never had parents so thankful and so honored and had such wonderful conversations as I've had with those parents of the students that are nominated for this particular award. It's not something that we advertise for good reason. The whole premise behind the award is that you're catching kids doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do and not because there's something attached to it. Again, it's just been a wonderful experience for the students that have had an opportunity and something for, I have, this is now the second year that we've done it. I've heard a little bit more chatter in the hallways after these ceremonies, award presentations are held at Outlaw Books. And I'm starting to get some other kids talking about it and thinking about it. Hopefully that sort of leadership and positive behavior is contagious. Also earlier this month, and I kind of buried this in the middle of my report, state testing in both ELA and math were completed. As always, thanks to Dr. Davenport and the high school for helping us create an optimal testing environment for our students. The 8th grade students will sit for the upcoming science assessment, both the performance and the written assessments. They'll take place, I believe, May 25th and June 2nd. Music news, last week members of the BMS band performed for the residents at Brookmead. In addition, the spring concert season gets underway next Thursday evening with the BMS band concert. That'll begin at 7 o'clock. As always, everyone is invited. And we'll follow with the choral and small ensemble concerts later in May and early June. Finally, on May 26th, The 7th and 8th grade bands will travel to New York City. They're going to attend an open rehearsal of the New York Philharmonic. Ms. Ulrich is especially excited for the students to attend this performance because they are going to be rehearsing a piece called The Planets by Gustav Holst, which is a piece that was originally written for band. And she's actually done some of that work. It's a little complex, but she's done some of that work with some of her performing groups in preparation for that trip. The BMS Anthropology Club continues to work with Bard Archaeology Professor Dr. Libner. They've done this the last several falls. We had such a good group of students. It was such a positive experience, not only for our students, as it always is, but also for the Bard professor and his students that he invited BMS students back to participate this spring. So in addition to the 4 trips they took to the dig site up in Germantown in the fall, they've been up there 3 times this spring already, and they will travel there once again next Friday for their last trip. On May 13th, health classes will welcome Randy Kreider. She is a 2009 Kingston graduate who lost her brother to drug addiction in 2015. Randy and her family immediately founded an organization titled Raising Your Awareness About Narcotics, RYAN for Ryan, her brother. And she delivers presentations to local school districts in hopes that by reaching out to others and sharing Ryan's story, a life will be saved. Finally, during the week of May 16th to the 20th, 7th grade students will spend an entire week outside of the classroom. We've had a tremendous amount of work has gone into planning for this week of experiences for our 7th grade students. We've received a lot of support from the Arts and Education Committee. We've received a tremendous amount of support from the Rhinebeck Science Foundation. Not only will we be able to do our walking history tour as we've done in years past, students will also participate in the Clearwater Shoreside program at Esopus Meadows. In addition to that, we're adding a number of trips throughout that week. Slabside Sanctuary that's run by the John Burroughs Association, the Phillies Bridge Farm Project. A lot of work, like I said, has gone into creating a real multidisciplinary experience for the students, and a lot of curriculum writing is taking place. So I look forward to sharing the details of that week with you.
Questions for Mr. Kempster?
Sounds
All
great.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk about 3 tough acts to follow. Next year, I'll see if I go before Mr. Krebs. I'd like to start with some academic updates. In the English department, the Bard students who visited with Ms. Baird's classes, you remember, in the fall, are now returning and working with students on creative writing. They hope to publish an anthology of work commemorating this event. And with Mrs. Baird and Professor Cabell from Bard, we're planning on next year's event to take place in late September. Students in Ms. Green's Writers Workshop class are continuing to work on their writing for publication, or looking at reaching out to the editors of the Chronogram for some publication opportunities. And in addition, as I've been mentioning, Mrs. Wheeler is continuing to solicit writing from across the curriculum, across the content areas in the high school to produce a high school anthology of writing. So many opportunities in our English department for students to engage in authentic writing, identifying an audience, and then crafting their prose. In the social studies department, members of the department attended the annual convention of the New York State Social Studies Teachers Association in Albany several weeks ago. The focus of these sessions were on promoting the role of social studies, promoting student engagement in our schools and communities, and also in changing assessment practices in social studies. So as the department works on their curriculum projects over the summer, we look forward to their incorporating what they've learned from that conference as they revise our curriculum. Again, as Mr. Krebs mentioned, in light of shifting, changing state standards. In the science department, Dr. Gene Likens spent the past couple of days visiting our living environment classes. Mrs. Fritz informed me that he's the founder of the CARE Institute, and his research focuses on ecological studies, and that's what he was giving our students an overview on. In the music department, last Friday, actually Friday, April 15th, the high school band went to Marist College to work with the director of bands at Marist, Arthur Himmelberger. Members of the Marist Wind Ensemble sat in on a side-by-side rehearsal with our student musicians, which is a great opportunity, very exciting for our kids. And they worked on two pretty challenging pieces of music. They look forward to returning next year for another co-rehearsal. In the co-curricular realm, I'm happy to report the high school musical was a success. Over 90 students participated in front of the curtain, behind the scenes. Over 1,200 people attended that weekend, and we're not including our fantastic audience on the Monday afterwards. Just to give you the flip side, Mr. King's presentation, our students absolutely loved performing for our Chancellor students and loved the question and answer session afterwards. I have to tell you, that's a fourth performance. They were pretty exhausted when I saw them in the lunchroom after that, but well worth it, and we hope to, I speak for Mrs. Baer and our advisors, we hope to continue that tradition. It was just a great opportunity, and thank Mr. King for coming over with his students. In the art department as well, the Montgomery show, the district-wide art exhibit at Montgomery Row begins May 1st to May 7th. If you're around, May 6th from 5 to 7 is an opening reception. There's wonderful, as you well know, student art from K through 12. I again take this moment to remind you or ask you if you happen to be in the building. Our senior showcases are up. They rotate every several weeks, and I'm just completely impressed by the work that our seniors do across all media in our art department, and that's a reflection of our K through 12 program. The Environmental Club last week sponsored a screening of a movie about the Civilian Conservation Corps. It was directed by Robert Stone. Mr. Stone was in attendance in the audience and was also available after the screening for some Q&A with our students. So our thanks go out to the Environmental Club. Very well attended screening of that movie. A great collaboration between our history department as well as our biology teachers. Our GSA sponsored the Day of Silence on April 15th. Looking ahead, the National Honor Society is sponsoring the Senior Citizen Prom, which will take place on May 14th. This week, thanks to the work of our school resource officers, we were able to hold an assembly on the dangers of distracted driving. The victim impact speaker, J.C. Good, and her husband addressed all of our students in grades 9 through 12 with a very powerful message. And I have to say that I was just so proud and impressed of our students, both in the way they comported themselves and the warm welcome that they gave to our speakers. And they were just, they were a fantastic audience, as usual. I'm never surprised to share this information, but I'm just really blown away when I see our students in action. On the topic of safe driving and looking a little bit further ahead, on May 16th and 17th, again with the support of our school resource officers and our PE department, we will again dedicate our phys ed classes to safe driving. We'll again conduct the Battle of the Belts on those two dates. In addition, from the state police, we have a device available for our students to experience, with parent permission, what a low-speed impact feels like when you're belted in. Just to try to give them a real-world example of why it's important to wear seatbelts. On May 18th that week, we will host again a victim impact speaker, John Bowler. For the past several years has spoken with our juniors as they prepare for all the great activities in the spring, including the prom. Our prom is on May 20th. I've mentioned this to so many people. Forgive me if I've already mentioned it to you, but I don't think I have. But we'll give you the signal if I have. But I was contacted a while ago from a French tutor who works at Barnes. And in speak with me, she indicated that she's from Paris, and that the Sorbonne she wrote a dissertation for a master's degree on the American prom. And I was totally fascinated, and as somewhat of a armchair expert on prom. So I met with her, and in speaking, she said, I've written about the prom, and here's what I think about it. I've never been to an American prom. And I said, well, let me check with Mrs. Hackett and see if we can host you. And so, quite kindly, Mrs. Hackett supported her attendance. So she will be, the Barber French tutor will be attending our prom. As kind of a trade-off, I asked her, hey, it would be great if you would come and speak with our students in our French classes about French language and culture. So we have a trade-off. So we'll be looking forward to her perspectives and seeing where theory and practice collide or don't collide. So that's May 20th for our prom. Looking maybe a little closer, our band concert is this Thursday. AP exams begin next week, May 27th. Our choral students will attend this adjudication festival in Bristol, Connecticut, and I'll stop at June 1st, where we will administer the Common Core Algebra 2 Regents exam, and hopefully that will be the last Common Core math exam we'll have to administer during classes, and everything will move off to the exam week as in future years. So that's a snapshot of the high school.
All right. Questions? No? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we move on to board committee reports. We have one, policy committee. I did those minutes, so I'll give the report. So we discussed the homework policy number 4730, which we'll be doing for a first reading tonight. The latest iteration of the policy leaves homework to a teacher's professional judgment to assign consistent with several criteria. And obviously, we felt that the policy is ready for first reading. Naxalone program, number 8124, which we do not currently have a policy on, establishes guidelines for training, procurement, storage, and use of Naxalone, commonly known as Narcan, which is a substance used when someone has overdosed on an opioid drug. We have a draft policy that was developed by our nurse in cooperation with our school physician from the workplace. And we had a number of questions and possible revisions, so the policy is going to our attorneys for review. And then we had a discussion on transgender issues, whether a topic, or we had discussed in a previous meeting whether we needed a policy on this topic. Joe has attended a panel discussion where the attorney on the panel recommended that we update our DASA section of our Code of Conduct to reflect transgender subjects and not have a specific policy. So we have more discussion on that forthcoming, I would guess. And we had several questions or discussions about various issues regarding transgender subjects. Joe has been talking about this with middle and high school principals, so we have more work to go on that. Our next meeting is on May 12th. Any questions? Okay. We'll move on to good news.
Yeah, I have one item to add to all the good news we've heard already, and thanks to Mr. Burnell's and Mr. Teeter's efforts, we've again this year been recognized by our insurance company, Utica National, with the School Safety Excellence Award. Something I don't want to take for granted. We've earned this quite a few years running. It requires not only ongoing efforts during the school year to meet a pretty lengthy, rigorous set of criteria, but also the preparation and submittal of an application for that award. So I thank Tom and Sheldon for what they do on a day-to-day basis to to make our school environment a safe one.
Thank you.
Deirdre?
I just want to recognize the fact that the Model UN, which got its start this year, just traveled down to New York City for a competition at the Dalton School. And a large group of our students joined students from Red Hook to travel down there and spend the day there. And really is quite a testament to the hard work of the students who founded this club and the officers of that club, and also the advisor as well as the brave chaperone who accompanied him down to enter this competition. It's really a testament to the hard work of the students and the faculty involved in the club.
Were you the brave chaperone?
I was not. I just watched them go. 6:20 in the morning. That's great.
All right, other good news? All right, we'll move on to old business. Any matters of old business? All right. Public comment. We have one final opportunity
Your
for
last
public
chance,
comment.
ladies.
For extra credit.
It's like Jeopardy or something.
All right. Seeing none. Other. No items of
know.
other.
No other.
Okay.
No other.
So we'll move on to action items. Is there anyone who would like to remove any item from the consent agenda? All right. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
By Deirdre?
Second.
By Lisa. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to cast one vote for Ralph Chumento as a candidate in the annual election of members of the Dutchess County Board of Cooperative Educational Services, BOCES?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to cast one vote for Ralph Coates as a candidate in the annual election of members of the Dutchess County Board of Cooperative Education Services, BOCES?
So moved.
By Deirdre. By Lisa. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to adopt a resolution to direct the district clerk to cast one vote to approve the Dutchess County BOCES administrative budget in the amount of $4,389,498 for the 2016-17 school year?
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to extend the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Rhinebeck regarding facilities use through August 31st, 2017.
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Discussion?
I just point out to the board that the item at your place this evening shows shows two additions which were requested by the town board, which our legal counsel reviewed and said, yeah, it's fine. So I just want to point out to you that there is a change from the original version that I gave you in your packet on Friday.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the Rhinebeck Crew Team overnight trip to the New York State Scholastic Rowing Association Championships in Saratoga, New York on May 13th through 15th, 2016 at no additional unbudgeted cost to the school district.
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act from Julie Tate to commence on September 6, 2016, with such leave to be taken as unpaid childcare leave through January 3, 2017.
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Jean Florio to score the 2015-16 Grade 4 New York State Science Assessments and of Patricia Danneman to score the 2015-16 Grade 8 New York State Science Assessments.
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the award and recognition of the CLS Physical Education Program for achieving second place in the 2016 New York State Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance, NYSAPHERD,
Nice deferred.
Southeastern Zone Get Moving New York Video Grant Contest in the total amount of $500 in Flag House equipment to benefit the students of Chancellor Livingston Elementary School as stipulated.
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Lisa.
I just want to say that I not only saw the video, but I voted for it. I thought it was fabulous. And I think that the fact that we only came in second shows rank bias on the behalf.
Apparently, we didn't vote enough.
Vote early enough? And
I did, almost every day.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a first reading and consideration of board policy number 4730, homework.
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion? Yes.
So can I just, is there background to any of this homework policy? I mean, years ago, I guess, are there any issues with homework? Years ago, there were issues with homework, going on. Parents complaining about homework, so.
The sort of the genesis of this was that there was a feeling amongst members of the committee that the policy, to the extent that it seemed to mandate the giving of homework and that the giving of homework be a frequent thing, didn't seem to necessarily square with the practice that we were seeing. And so we asked to look into it and got a good deal of feedback from the administration, directly from the principals, and went through a couple of iterations that we saw before.
Yes, this is the sixth, I believe, yeah.
Right. I think it's fair to say that it sort of almost made not a complete circle, but sort of like a three-quarter circle from what was originally there to something that was, much more the teachers should do what the teachers think they ought to do, to more structured to what you see tonight. So, it was an interesting process.
Yeah, it really came out of what has been an ongoing process of, reviewing a chunk of policies. It wasn't in reaction to an issue or a complaint or a problem, but I think our initial review of that led the committee to believe that maybe this one needs to be updated, and that's what we tried to do. But you're right. I'm not saying this in a negative way, but the administrators and I went around and around and around. Not that there was argument or disagreement so much as getting the right wording to say what they all felt comfortable saying to support the practice, and to make sure that homework is given in a thoughtful, deliberate way that aligns with instruction and that values the professional judgment of the teacher in how to implement that.
Deirdre.
I just want to express appreciation to the committee for taking that on. I remember it came up a couple moments earlier, maybe even last year.
Last year,
right?
Yeah.
I do remember certain requests coming, isolated requests coming over the time I've been on this board, and given the diversity of opinions around the assignment of homework, probably within the professional faculty as well as within the community, I really have to take my hat off to you for kind of threading the needle with reviewing the policy and bringing this language forward.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. I really appreciate the language that's in this. It's not anything, to my reading, anything like where we started, and I really appreciate this language. It's great.
I agree.
I think all the credit goes to the staff on this, administrative and teachings.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to adopt the following resolution. Whereas the Board of Education, in accordance with Article 5A of the General Municipal Law, invited sealed proposals for furnishing student transportation services in the Rhinebeck Central School District for home-to-school transportation and field and sports trips transportation which proposals were opened publicly on March 30th, 2016, and whereas L&N Bus Corporation is the lowest responsible bidder for home-to-school transportation and field and sports trip transportation contracts, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby awards the contracts for home-to-school transportation and field and sports trip transportation to L&N Bus Corporation as the lowest responsible bidder in accordance with the bid specifications for the period April 4th, 2016 through June 30th, 2016, in accordance with the prices specified in the bid documents and as presented in the Transportation Bid Summary dated March 30th, 2016, annexed hereto and made a part of this resolution. Said contracts to be executed by the Superintendent of Schools upon the furnishing by the contractor of the required security for the performance of said contracts, e.g. performance bond, in the amount of the individual contract prices and in the form specified and in the bid documents.
So moved.
By Deirdre?
Second.
By Lisa. Discussion? Laura?
To move to table this item as well as 6.12 for further discussion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second, but I have a comment. Is that now or maybe now? I'm just wondering if, for people listening, if either Tom or Joe, if you could just make sure, update the public on where we are with transportation. Just as we said, we would keep the people informed, even though we're not voting on this now, but just kind of where we are with our transportation for next year.
Well, I'm not sure I understand where we are.
I think the last time we had maybe a public information about it was when we had an emergency contract for a new company. So as far as updating.
Right. So there's two resolutions in front of you tonight. The first resolution is to take you from, can't remember the exact date, but April 4th through the end of the year. So we had an emergency contract with Total Transportation, or in this case, L&M.
Same company.
Same company, who filled that emergency contract. And while that emergency contract was being done, we put two RFPs out. One to get us through the end of this year, okay, and then to begin a new 3-year contract with whatever vendors that were, whatever, transportation companies are out there.
It's a competitive bid.
Yep, so it went out there as a competitive bid. The first one you have on here, which just gets us through the end of the year, a lot was placed on the emphasis of being able to do this without skipping a beat. And of course, there's really only one company that could do that because they had the drivers who knew the routes, had everything in place. So they were the only company that actually bid on that particular one. And because of the situation that happened this past year with Always East, that contract was basically at the end of this year is null and void. So we had to go into a 3-year contract for the next 3 years. It's 3 1-year contracts, to tell you the truth, but they're 3 separate, it's 3 1-year contracts, what it is, basically. And what this does is, at the end of the first year, and this is how it was written, that there would be a negotiation with the company for the following year's rate increase, that it'd be no greater than the transportation CPI, which we won't know until June anyways. It doesn't matter, it's June of the following year. We have rates for the next year. And then that would be in the 2 subsequent years after that. This has the ability to keep on rolling over year after year going forward, but that's a mutual between us and L&M. And that would just be going up at the transportation CPI.
So it's, just to clarify, because I had to wrap my head around this the other day, the CPI is the increase. We could negotiate a rate less than the CPI. The CPI's been running around 0.
Been 0.
So less than the CPI is probably, we're probably not going to have a negotiation over that. But if by some odd coincidence the CPI shot up to 10% in the 3rd year of this contract, we could sit down and say, 10% is ridiculous. Let's negotiate on something less than that, and if you're not interested in negotiating, then we go out to bid again and look for somebody else. So it would really protect us in the event that the CPI, but it's been almost zero for quite a few years, so we're not anticipating that's going to happen, but.
It could, and that CPI doesn't have that 2% or less type of thing on it. It's whatever the CPI is, so there's no caveat.
It's not like our tax levy cap.
Right. Heaven forbid.
Well, I'll second Laura's motion to table this 6.11 and 6.12.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor of tabling the motion? That's unanimous. That motion passes to table. So do I have to read the next resolution, or should we do it after?
6.12?
Yeah.
I don't think so, because you just tabled it.
Okay. So we'll move on to 6.13. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute teachers and substitute non-instructional staff for the 2015-16 school year.
So moved.
By Deirdre?
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion?
I just bring to your attention that there are 2 additional names on that list from the document that you received in your packet on Friday. So you're voting on all 3, not just the original name.
Okay. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. A motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussion of a vendor contract.
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We're moving into executive session.